Welcome to Sports Extra. I'm your host, Ali Gohar. Tonight, we're going to speak to two incredible mountaineers from Hungary. One of them is Szilard Suhajda, and the other one is David Klein. They both set off to climb K2 late June, and they made it in style. Szilard went all the way to the top. Unfortunately, David Klein, due to illness, couldn't go all the way to the top, but his sacrifice, his decision was extraordinary because he sacrificed his ambitions for the success of the expedition. So it'll be very exciting talking to them about what they went through and, you know, just everything that they needed to do, their preparation, how they got there. It's going to be a fascinating story. So we're going to get down to it right away with my guests in the studio. I've been joined by Szilard Suhajda. Szilard, hello.
Hi, good evening.
Congratulations, well done.
Thank you very much.
And we've also been joined by his partner, David Klein. David?
Hello.
Great to see you.
Yes, great to see you.
Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you very much.
Now, I mean, I have to ask, before we get into the what you went through, climbing K2 and all that, this particular experience, I'm very interested to know, what got you into mountaineering? What made you decide to take this up? Because as I was saying to you earlier, or off air, that there has to be a certain level of madness to be able to take up a sport like this. And then I'll ask David the same question, but you first, Szilard.
Yeah, it's probably not too much to talk about madness, but I think it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
However, it's very difficult to explain. And for example, if I look at my parents or my grandmother, they will probably never really understand my motivation, but hopefully they can accept, even if they don't understand. Yeah. Well, I really try to, yes, I try to collect all my, motivations, but first of all, it's really about challenge. It's about experience. It's about something great that you experience. For example, this time when we travel to a different country, there is an amazing culture that we can see, amazing people, amazing natural environment. So most of the time I say that it's like a pilgrimage. So it's not just about 2 months in the mountains, it's not just about some sport achievement, it's not just about numbers, but it's like a pilgrimage. It changes you.
It's very interesting, the word you use, pilgrimage, and I'm going to get back to that later on in the show. But David, what about you? What's your story? What got you into mountaineering, one of the most dangerous things in the world to do?
I started quite early. I was 12 when I started climbing, and in Hungary in the 80s it was quite unique to climb. There was only a handful of climbers in Hungary in the 80s, and I think the reason why I started it is because I'm very, very bad in soccer. And in Hungary, you are supposed to play soccer.
You're nuts about soccer. Your country loves it.
Yes, my country loves it. Everybody in Hungary is fascinated about it, and I don't care, and I'm very bad. I couldn't hit the ball, but I also recognized that I liked physical exercise. I liked running. I liked the outdoors. I liked climbing onto things, and I like adventure. And the moment I realized that there is a sport called climbing, mountaineering, I fell in love with it. I was lucky because I had a good mentor early on, and then I did the basic climbing course, and from the age of 13 I became a mountain climber.
Right. So, Szilard, this is not your first 8,000 meter climb, not your first 8,000 peak climb, but you are the first Hungarian to climb K2. When you reached the top, what was that feeling like? Describe it if you can.
Actually, it's not something you would expect, because I think I felt very empty. I felt total freedom, and I felt emptiness. So when you are at that altitude, especially without oxygen, it's not just your body, but also your thinking that's very, very slow. So you don't even realize what is happening. And actually that was the case. I was not really realizing where I was exactly. I even had this misconception that I was on another mountain. So yes, you focus on reaching the summit and you focus on surviving. And reaching the top, standing on the top of a mountain, it's only halfway. So from there, you need to get back to life. So it was not about pure happiness, but it was about only that 30 minutes maybe on the top. And I have just started. For example, today we were talking with David about the whole experience, and we have just started realizing what we have achieved.
So it's more a sense of, from your answer, it's more a sense of relief. That's what I'm gathering. Yes, of course. I mean, they're more because you're on such a high, right? And you're almost like delirious. But then when things start to, settle in, when you first, when it all, when you realize what's happened, then you just feel relieved that you finally gotten to the top.
Yes, actually, the whole experience, the whole expedition is very, very real. So you are there and you leave every second. But when you are at the highest area, when you are above 8,000 meters, and especially when you are above 8,500 meters, then it's more like being in a dream, literally. So basically what is going on now is that we have just started understanding what we have achieved.
Right, you couldn't have done it without the man sitting beside you,
Exactly.
David Klein.
It was teamwork.
And David Klein made a very, very courageous decision. Courageous, I will say that, because you are a professional climber. You've climbed 8,000 meter peaks before, and I'm sure you were desperate to do this, but you put your ego aside, which is a very difficult thing to do for a strong athletic man. But you thought, no, for my partner, for the expedition, I'm going to let him go further because I know I just can't carry on. That was an extraordinary decision you made.
Yes, it wasn't that easy, but you described it pretty well. I had to choose between two things. I knew that I am not well. I had stomach problems, cramps in my stomach, and I also had this violent urge to throw up, to vomit. And altitude magnifies everything, and I knew that there is a chance that I will get better, and there is a chance that I could go with Szilard and we could reach the top together, but there is also a chance that because of my condition, we will both have to turn back and the expedition will be a failure. So I had to choose between these two things, and we don't use supplementary oxygen, we don't use high altitude porters, so there is very little margin for error. And it was clear to me that it will be much easier for me to live with my decision if I turn back than to live with the decision that I continue and we both have to fail because of me. Yeah. So it was easy.
Yeah, as I said, you've done this, 4 times before, 8,000 meter peaks. And
yes.
The last time you did it was in 2016, I believe.
Yes.
Annapurna. Can you compare and contrast the two?
Yes, I can. I hope I can. Annapurna is much, much lower. It's barely 8,000 meters, 8,091 meters. But if you compare all the 14 8,000 meter peaks, Annapurna is the least frequently climbed 8,000er, and it's the deadliest, it's the most dangerous. So when I went to Annapurna, yes, physical preparation was important, but psychological preparation was also important, especially because before me, there was another Hungarian expedition that didn't only fail, but also left a fatality on the mountain. One guy died. So I had to psychologically prepare, and I had to prepare a strategy that will minimize the risk. And I was lucky. I could pull off the first Hungarian ascent of Annapurna, and that was in 2016. And that was right before we tried K2 together for the first time in 2016.
I want to ask you about your loved ones, your families. First off, when you told them that you were going to climb K2, I'm sure they knew that it was one of the riskiest climbs in the world. And when you finally reached the top, and then they realized that you reached the top, what was their reaction?
Well, actually, David could tell us what their reaction was, because he was in contact with my family from base camp. Right. But actually, it was not a surprise for them anyway. K2 as an objective. For example, my wife, she was very aware of my ambitions regarding K2, because in 2015 she was actually here, and when I first attempted K2, she came to base camp, so she has a very good impression of Pakistan. And actually, yes, you know, basically we've done 3 K2 expeditions together, so my wife is very tough and well trained.
That's great.
Yes, it's a big thing. I'm sure that she's the.
It's wonderful you have that in common.
Yeah, she's the only woman from Hungary who could do that.
Yeah.
And who has done it. So basically, yes, it's. I'm sure that if we are talking about relief, then this is the true relief for them. That K2 is, well, it's completed, it's done, and we are coming home.
Yeah. So I'm sure, David was comforting her, just telling her that, he's going to be absolutely fine, he's prepared for this, and he's reached the top, and I'm sure she was extremely happy for both of you. It's incredible what both of you have achieved. Just going back to teamwork, we'll talk a little bit about the preparation and the psychological preparation you have to go through, but once you're climbing, once you're just about to reach the top, even before that, you need your partner's support. Now, I'd like you to tell the viewers just how important teamwork is in these kinds of expeditions.
It is very important, I think. As far as I'm concerned, climbing is a unique combination of 2 things: personal responsibility and responsibility for your partner. When you are on the sharp end of the rope, as we say, when you are leading a pitch, then you are responsible for your decisions. You could place a protection here, or you could omit the protection and continue because you want to be fast. You could traverse the right, or you could go up straight. So you have to make lots of personal choices, and you are responsible for your choices. But at the same time, you know that if you screw up something and you fall, it will be your partner who will block the rope and catch you. So it's a very interesting combination, and that's one of the reasons why I love climbing. On a daily level, we are physically very, very close. Like in a tent, you are virtually much closer to the other person than here in the studio. It's a very personal thing, but I will share it with you. Of course, every climber uses pee bottles.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to go out 2 in the evening from the tent. But it's a very tight space, so you are actually peeing literally this far from the head of the other guy. For that kind of intimacy, you have to really be patient, and you have to understand the other person, understand when he's
understanding and very tolerant, of course.
Yes, So it's a very tight relationship between climbing partners.
Right. Now, Szilard, this isn't the first time you've climbed K2, or well, this is the first time it worked out. Before that, it didn't. You had tried how many times before? 2 or 3 times?
Yeah, I tried in 2015 for the first time, and then we tried together in 2016.
Okay. Why didn't it work out?
Actually, they were 2 consecutive years when no one reached the summit, so they were no summit years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, huge avalanches swept the high altitude camps, and basically that ended the season of 2016, for example. Before that, we could make a very good decision not to go higher, because somehow we could feel that it was not okay. There were 2 big teams on the mountain. There was some peer pressure on us because all the climbers using oxygen were above us. But then, yes, there was this huge avalanche swept Camp 3 completely.
Right.
Fortunately, no one was there. It could have been the greatest tragedy of mountaineering history, but because it was supposed to be there, like, I don't know, 60 or 70 climbers that day, no one was there. They were 2 unlucky years. I would say that we were probably prepared. We were physically fit. In 2016, David was perfectly acclimatized after Annapurna. So we had a good chance to reach the summit. But yes, this is the way it is.
I said this when I first saw both of you, just before the show. You 2 look in pretty good nick. I mean, I've interviewed people who have just climbed K2, And I mean, you should just see them. I mean, frostbite on their nose, their hands, their feet. You two seem all right. Is there any particular reason for that?
I think yes. I think if you climb without oxygen, you have to have a decent margin of safety, at least if you want to do it for a long time. I mean, you can push it. There's this expression that the athlete breaks into the finish line with his last morsel of energy. Now, in climbing, if you actually punch through the finish line with your last morsel of energy, then who's going to take you down?
Right.
You have to have a safety of margin.
No, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And you mentioned oxygen. You guys didn't have, both of you didn't have extra oxygen. Now, some would advise against that. But David, you had some very interesting thoughts on that. Would you like to share them?
Yes, I think that there is, first of all, the underlying reason for us is a moral reason. Every game is defined by its limitations. In soccer, if you could pick up the ball and run with it, then that would be another game. If you run a marathon, of course, it will be much easier to cover 42 kilometers using a motorbike, but everybody will point out that this is not running a marathon. This is, cycling a marathon or doing it with a motorbike. In climbing, the challenge is not to get to the top, but to get to the top with a certain style. And that means that since in high altitude mountaineering, the most significant aspect of the challenge is that there is no air up there, or there's very little air up there. If you modify this one aspect, you have modified the most significant aspect of the challenge. That's why we don't use oxygen. I also believe that it's more safe, but that's another question.
Yeah. Now, was there ever a point during this climb where you thought that you just weren't going to make it, that we've got to go down now? It's just not happening. You mentioned weather conditions in 2016, but I understand you were also advised not to go to the top because there's heavy snowfall as well. So was there ever a point where both of you were just like, no, this is not worth it?
Yeah, it would be easy to talk about difficulties because there are certain difficulties on a mountain like this. But this expedition, I would say that it was just perfect from the very beginning. We have a very good team back home in Hungary. There was the partners of the expedition believing in us. And then when we got to base camp and we started our acclimatization process, actually everything came together. We were very, very lucky with the weather, and we could complete 3 acclimatization rounds up to Camp 3, up to 7,400 meters. We didn't have to wait any extra days. Everything was spot on. And then in the beginning of, in the middle of July, there was a first summit attempt by the big teams. And at that time, as later we heard, there was just way too much snow in the so-called bottleneck couloir, around 8,300 meters. That is a crux of the whole route. So it's a key place to get to the summit. And then it was very difficult to hear that when all these climbers, all these teams retreated, and they were just about to go home and to leave base camp, that most of them said that it was impossible to get to the summit this year. So, it was difficult to prepare for our summit attempt when everyone around you was talking about that, it was impossible to go to the summit this year. So it was a kind of pressure.
But a kind of motivation as well.
But kind of motivation because you wanted to go against the flow, and we were still believing that, come on, everything was fine. So we just keep going and it will be okay.
David, now you hear a lot of people talking about, and I'll get your view on this as well, Lizard. When you talk to mountaineers, they say K2 by far is the most dangerous mountain to climb. Now, do you agree with that, or are there other peaks that have been slightly more challenging, or is K2 by far the most challenging?
No, I would differentiate between dangerous and difficult. K2 is far the most technical 8,000er. Now, every mountain has a normal route, a so-called normal route. You can go to Margalla Hills by the trail, and you can find some steeper path to the top. So if you compare all the normal routes, K2 has the most technical normal route and is the second highest. So probably is the most difficult 8,000er. But statistically, Annapurna is far the most dangerous 8,000er. If you compare how many people have summited Annapurna and how many people have perished, how many people have died on Annapurna, then statistically that's the most dangerous. So usually we differentiate, we identify three most in the Himalayas or in the greater Himalayas, including the Karakoram Mountains.
Right.
Everest is far the highest.
Of course.
K2 is the most difficult, and Annapurna is the most dangerous. Usually, this is the three most in the Himalayas.
What I'm really interested to know about, I mean, when you think of great athletes, of course, we love watching Muhammad Ali's fights. We love watching Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi scoring goals. But what, I mean, because I love sport, and what I'm more interested in is their preparation. How did they get here? The kind of work that they needed to put in to get to this point. So that's what I want to ask you, David, and then I'll move on to Lizard. Okay. The preparation that you had to go through, that you generally as well, not just for this climb specifically, but you have to go through before setting off on a massive expedition. Yeah.
Usually we differentiate, we identify three types of preparation. There is strategic, there is physical, and there is mental preparation. And I think I will give strategy and physical to Szilard, but just to point out something that's actually interesting, I will talk a little bit about mental preparation. For example, we used sports psychologists before, and I remember when we had the first session, not the first, but maybe the third or fourth session with this guy, we were sitting there and we were imagining climbing on the summit ridge. And I had to tell what I'm doing. And I told, I suck some liquid from my tube. We use this camelback for hydration. And then I realized that I just imagined that I am drinking from this tube, but I did not blow back the air into the tube. Now, if I don't blow back into the tube, then the liquid will freeze in my tube. If the liquid freezes in my tube, then I will not reach the summit because I cannot drink. And in the worst case scenario, I will die. So from that moment, every time when I told the psychologist that I am drinking from the tube, I also added, and I blow back into the tube. Now, at this moment, it's impossible for me to drink from this tube without blowing back. So small things, mental preparation, strategy matters a lot.
Yeah. Lizard, would you like to expound?
Well, just regarding physical preparation, it's like, actually we are preparing 7 days a week, I would say. And this is a very strict schedule in our everyday life. And basically this is a must, this is a minimum that we have to do before, setting off to a mountain like this. And if I was not sure that I am prepared physically, or both physically and mentally, then I would probably decide not to go to a mountain like this. That would be irresponsible. So this is our responsibility to prepare, just as much as we can, so perfectly, and then we still need a huge amount of luck, as we can see on the mountain.
No, it's so interesting. Of course, you have to prepare physically. There's no doubt about that. But by the way, both of you were talking, you're saying that your headspace, your thought process, you have to be mentally strong to be able to do that, and that's what takes you to the top. So during difficult circumstances, like for example, when you fell ill, I'm sure Lizard in some way had to comfort you, had to sort of see you through this, and then you had to do something similar, encouraging him to get to the top, telling him that, look, you'll be fine, you go do this, have your moment, make this happen. So you have to also be connected.
Yes, but the two situations don't compare completely, because when I turned back and Szilard stayed on the mountain, there was some room for talking and discussing and empathy, but the main focus was that once I decided that I have to pull the plug and go down, Szilard had to focus on going up. So there was a limited room for empathy and reflection. Empathy and reflection comes afterwards. Now, of course, we talk a lot about the decision, and we talk about how great it was that Szilard went to the summit and how great it would have been to be on the summit together. On the other hand, yes, once Szilard decided to continue, I had a purpose. When I went down to base camp, I called my girlfriend via satellite phone, and I told her that if Szilard reaches the summit, then it was for something. It wasn't for nothing.
Of course.
And from that moment on, I had something to focus on. I had to contact Szilard by radio. I had to give him feedback about his condition, how his voice sounds, how high he is, what I think about his progress rate. So I became Houston, to use a NASA metaphor, to use a space metaphor.
I'd like you to talk about this a little bit more. When you found out that he reached the top, and then when you finally saw him after he reached the top, how were you feeling? What was going through your mind?
But before he reached the top, there was another like 50 meters probably to the top. He radioed me and told me that he sees the last rope leading to the summit. And at that moment, I felt a certain amount of relief because his voice was coherent. He sounded composed. He sounded like he knows what he is doing. The sun was already up for many hours, and he was warm. He wasn't falling asleep. So I knew that he's going to reach the summit soon. And then I asked our cook, Akbar, who is a great guy. I mean, we had a great staff, a two-man staff in base camp, Akbar and Ali. Right. So I asked Akbar to come out in front of the kitchen tent and to sing his favorite surah from the Quran. And we were facing K2, and I knew that Szilard is climbing towards the summit, and he sang his favorite surah from the Quran. And that was an uplifting moment. That was a great moment. And then maybe 10 minutes later, the radio started to crank, and I could hear Szilard's voice, and he told me that he has reached the summit and he's all right.
You narrated that so beautifully. You know, I don't even know where to go from here. Just that whole thing, like, it's just absolutely amazing.
I think to have this connection and this routine on the mountain, we needed all our previous years, including failures on expeditions. So unfortunately, people may see them as only failures, but we can see lots of work in all of these expeditions, not just the successful ones, but I think all of them contributed to the experience we have now and to the success that we have just achieved. So yes, these experiences, they add up, and that's how.
No, it's so interesting you say that, and I asked you about your previous attempts, but you didn't make it, but you must have learned so much from those. I mean, you call it failures, fine, but they're not really. I mean, you probably learned so much during those experiences. And even someone was interviewing Michael Jordan once, the greatest basketballer of all time, and then they just kept asking him about the interviewer kept asking him about his success. He's like, look, I just want to tell you, you know, overall, I've missed about 9,000 shots, 9,000 shots, and I learned so much from those 9,000 shots, and that's why I'm here today. So it's very interesting you talk about learning from failure, and that's why you're sitting here today, the first Hungarian to climb K2. That's incredible. Now, another thing I want to bring up, you very early on in the interview, you mentioned the word pilgrimage, and that really struck me. You know, it has a religious sort of spiritual connotation to it. And then David talked about the cook, your cook, Ali or Akbar, was it? Saying his...
Akbar was the cook, Ali was the assistant
reciting
cook,
his favorite surah from the Quran. That was must have been a beautiful moment. Now, tell me, when you're, both of you, I can ask both of you this actually, when you're climbing and then you're looking into the outer, these beautiful mountains around you with snow and just, you know, a clear blue sky, do you feel some sort of a spiritual connection or some kind of connection when you're up there? Any kind of connection?
Yes, definitely.
Can you describe that? Is it something
Yes, you know, I think it's not just about exploring mountains and, I don't know, exploring the beauties, for example, the Karakoram mountain range. But when we are in the mountains and we are this high on a mountain, then it's also about self-exploration. So yes, we are getting we have the opportunity to look inside, and it's also about getting know each other much better. So partnership and friendship, yes, it just gets stronger on an expedition like this. And it's very important that when you are up there, you are truly yourself. So you take off all your masks. You cannot be anyone else, because, you know, people get very simple up there, no matter where you are from, what kind
you
of
tend to get caught
yes,
up in
what kind of background, because, you know, you are crawling for your life. You want success, you want to survive, you experience happiness, you experience doubts, you experience fear, and you know, you are very, very sincere, and it can be actually a bit frightening as well, or terrifying for yourself. So I'm sure that if you come this far and if you go this high and you experience these you experience a kind of event horizon, you are on the border of life and, let's say, something else, then it's unavoidable that you come back as a different person, hopefully a better person.
David, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I mean, first of all, I am grateful to you, because you are like 1 out of 1,000 TV hosts who has not used the word conquer yet. And I'm very grateful for that, because it's a very popular phrase when it comes to climbers. We are set
Thank you very much.
We are set to conquer things and whatever, you know. But that's not our experience. When we are on a summit, especially when we are on the summit of an 8,000 meter peak, our experience is that we are very, very small. We barely exist. We are, as Szilard says, we are clinging to life with both of our hands.
Yeah.
And we are guests. If we work very hard and we listen to each other and we listen to the mountain, then the mountain might allow us to be guests on its summit for a very, very limited time. And if you are a guest, then it's unpolite to pretend that we are a conqueror. It's unpolite to leave garbage up there, for example. So
I'm sure you've seen a lot of that up north.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So yes, it is more like a humble experience as a guest than a conqueror.
I so admire what you have achieved, but more than that, I admire the respect that you have for mountains. I mean, the way you're talking about mountains, like it's a living thing. And I wanted to conduct this interview in such a way where I just don't want to ask you about what you physically went through. Of course, we have to touch on that. But it was just so interesting when both of you just spoke right now. I mean, you were in touch with, you connected with all the qualities. And that's what happens in a big climb like this. You connect and you're in touch with all the qualities that the Almighty has given us. It's fascinating.
Yes.
Now, we have to wrap up soon, but before I do, I'd just like to get your thoughts on Pakistan and what it means to you, this country.
Well, let me share you something very personal.
Sure.
Because I think my private life, my marriage is personal.
Yeah.
And in 2015, then my girlfriend, now my wife, she was here. She came to K2 base camp. And then, fortunately, we could spend another almost 2 weeks together in the Skardu area and in Islamabad and Rawalpindi. And actually, the whole Pakistan experience contributed to my marriage. It was very, very important, very nice, and I'm sure that, yes, it was something very important in my relationship. So this is something personal. But
Wonderful to hear.
yes, anyway, my first 8,000 meter expedition was here in Pakistan in 2012. This is my 6th year here, and definitely not the last one. And you know, as always, it's it's very, very nice to come back to this country. And I'm sure that because with David, we talk about our experiences and we share our adventures in Hungary. We talk to thousands of people, including students, everyone in Hungary every year. And I have talked much more about Pakistan than from about my home country, for example.
David, very quickly, because we have to wrap up, your thoughts on Pakistan.
Yeah, I love Pakistan. I came here first in 1998, 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. And this is probably my 10th visit. And I think I'm deeply entangled with this country. I love its people. I love the colorful culture. And yeah, I think part of me is always here.
Yeah. Szilard, David, it was an honor to have you on. It really was. Congratulations to both of you. You've done tremendously well, and I'm sure you're going to do greater things going forward. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching Sports Extra on PTV World. See you next time. Bye-bye.